I left, I asked a question about the concrete sidewalks is out, that, we're eliminating that, that's for sure, right?
That's correct.
All right, but they're talking about contemplating on putting the stone path.
That's on Woodland Road.
Right, on Woodland Road. And then you said that the cost, if I remember, would be about $50,000
For the gravel.
for the gravel. Would that include the tree removal and all the other stuff? Is that $50,000 including all that? Moving all the shrubs and trees?
There's very few trees that would actually have
talked
to be
about this,
removed with the proposal. So yes, I would say generally it does include
So
that
that
cost.
50,000, so, and then the cost was 840-something thousand total cost?
That is correct. That is Almond's last estimate.
And a little over half is coming from a grant or something?
The state has given us initially a $175,000 grant, a second grant for $250,000, and a third grant for $116,000. Altogether, it's much more than 50% of the project.
Right.
But the 116 is for Sampson.
That's correct.
Yeah, the other two are for Woodland.
The other two are for Woodland. So
But
Woodland is about $450 altogether, Sam.
So what you're really saying, Bob, is, if I remember from earlier, it was $850 for Woodland, correct?
Correct.
And you're saying now that you have $450 for
from the
Woodland.
state,
Okay,
correct.
so you're really talking $400,000 for Woodland out of pocket, correct?
That's correct.
Now,
If the bids come in lower, that's a possibility.
okay, well, I won't be sarcastic, but, so, what was
It's a
the
very
other?
competitive market.
No,
I'm hopeful. I am hopeful.
I'm always hopeful too. The other grant, what was that number again?
Sampson Avenue?
Yeah,
Sampson Avenue, the cost estimate was $140,000. The state match was $116,000.
okay, so that's
Much better.
85%.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question regarding curbs. Are curbs mandated to be put in at this point because of stormwater regulations, or is that just a decision we make, that it's easier to maintain a road in the 21st century with curbs? I mean, why do we have to have curbs? And are we curbing the park area, Niles Avenue, where people pull in because it's the only place to park? I mean,
Is it mandated, number one? No, it's not. Is it good practice? Yes, it is.
and why?
The reason is that it gives you a better design life on your paved surface because of edge control. It also helps improve drainage because of elevation control. Without curbing, your paved surfaces have a much greater tendency to undulate and be poorer controlled without a fixed elevation for the curbing. And the edge of the pavement also has a much greater tendency to expand and crack at the limits of the pavement if you don't have a concrete surface there holding the edges of the pavement in. And so we have been fairly consistent with regards to putting curbing in road reconstruction projects throughout town. There are some exceptions.
Well, what's the design life of a road with curbing?
25 years.
And that's exactly what it is with Woodland Road.
Well, no, the curbing lasts 50 though.
Curbing lasts 50.
Curbing will
Because
last
right now,
twice as long.
as you heard Mrs. Martin say,
She doesn't want curbs.
Mrs. Martin is probably the only person who's parking on Woodland Road in the middle of the sidewalks.
right,
And I wondered often why she wasn't ticketed, because no one can park on a sidewalk in town.
but what are we going to do with the curbs at the park? Because that's an issue. How are you going to handle
Yeah.
parking?
Very long distance of drop curb, which means the
Okay.
curb would be at the pavement elevation. So people
Niles
could
would
drive
be-
off and drive back
It
on.
still holds the road.
Still
But
holds
it
the
still
road,
holds.
still
Right.
maintains the elevations
Yeah,
for
I mean, that's
runoff.
where the road is really cracked.
Correct.
And that's where you get the most parking and helps get the cars up.
All right, so that drop curbing will help and keep the pavement in place.
Again, it controls the elevation and the spreading of the pavement much better than not having curb.
Okay.
So,
Bob, just one last question that's kind of been bugging me all night about I would call it sidewalks, all right? Why would we go to a granular, non-cement sidewalk? Because, I mean, is it least resistance? Is it the cost of it? Can't be the wear and tear over the long haul, because cement's gonna last a lot longer
Agreed.
than a granular rock. I do know that the granular rock is gonna be less expensive and easier installed. Is it also because of a lesser amount of resistance from people that live there?
The aesthetics, basically.
Well, two things. The granular subbase that we would install provides a reasonable base for concrete, should concrete be put in a future day. And the second is, it makes more sense to have a defined granular path off the road than no path at all. And so that's where I believe the design proposal left off. The decision, I believe, in Almond's mind was, well, if we're getting a fair amount of resistance on the surface treatment, it would be better to have a granular surface that was more acceptable to more people, rather than no sidewalk or walkway off the road at all.
But over the next 20 years, isn't it gonna cost the borough more money for that than it would be for cement?
If we were to maintain it properly,
Well,
yes,
I mean, if we're
certainly
gonna why put it in if we're not gonna maintain it, right?
no argument.
I'm not,
That's the decision
you know, I'm
you have to
just,
make.
I do agree, Don, and it's pay me now or pay me later type of thing, I suppose.
There were, at the first, or the November hearing for Woodland, there was, the comments of preserve our country look of the road, and so this, as Bob pointed out, this was kind of the compromise. It also allows a easier meandering walkway.
Yeah.
So you can preserve.
that's why I
trees.
also said the least resistance.
Yeah, least resistance, neighborhood and tree-wise.